hello, you pleasure seekers out there. This is Claudia Monticelli with another episode of Pleasure Seeking, the Pleasure Seeking podcast. And today I have a guest who's quite specific, particular. I like to call her a sort of mix between an entrepreneur, a businesswoman, a surgeon for the way she operates, and much, much more. But let me first introduce her. She is going to share her story with us because currently she's a first generation college student and an MBA candidate at Johns Hopkins University and was a tutor at Harvard. And along this academic journey of hers, she encountered a lot of difficulties, like many women do, with her self-confidence. She saw the difference between the male and the female students. And this led her to start a female-led consulting company as a source of empowerment for women, in an effort to do her part in closing this gender gap. And she'll be talking about that. And she'll also be talking about her project called the JuDi Project. And underneath this podcast, I'll be putting out links and telling you how you can contact her for anything. And one thing that I have to say, she has literally in research, we say operationalized when you're studying a concept. She's operationalized the concept of confidence. And the way she does it, I mean, she goes in with a team, like a surgery team, a surgical precision, to find the difficulties and starts working on them. And then the analysis and all of the rest. So let's have her on. Come on in, Christine Woodward. Let's give her a round of applause. Christine, how are you today, Christine?
Well, thank you so much for having me, Claudia. And thank you for that introduction. That's one of the best I've heard. I think I'm going to just repeat what you say as I introduce myself in the future. So thank you for that.
Well, one thing, I know we have a lot of things to talk about. I mean, you have a lot of things to talk about in your relatively young age, but you have a lot of experience in this field. And what I specifically like about you, Christine, is how you jumped on the insight of seeing a difference there. And just, again, I'll use the term operational. You put it into action and you created a little empire for a specific issue. What we're going to talk, well, of course, she has this consulting practice that she'll always refer to, of course, but I'd like to specifically, if you don't mind, talk about confidence and
yes,
what exactly does it mean for you, and how do you go about working with women in that field, in the business area? And then go on, I guess, probably talking about the differences when we talk about the gender gap. Mm-hmm. We hear that a lot. A gap means something is missing or there's just a division. So we could hit on that. And then there's also a topic that I would like to, and I won't even mention it. We'll talk about that in the end, and I'll pick it up at the end. So that's a surprise ending.
Good,
so
okay.
You have the floor. Tell us about yourself and how did it start? I mean, I said it, but you have more.
No. I appreciate it. No, and I really do love the term operationalized, the concept of confidence. That is just so perfectly put. So to answer your first question, confidence in my consulting business, that is, as you said, something I wanted to do was to empower women. And the first way that I came about was to bring women on under the umbrella of the 19th & Co. consultancy to allow them.
Okay, so 19th & Co. is your company, right?
Yes, yeah, thank you. Mm-hmm. To allow them the opportunity and the space to practice their craft without getting bogged down of owning their own practice, right? So
every now and then I'll jump in. When you say their craft, you mean whatever business they're into? Or
yeah, their expertise. So, one comes from the retail space, who's an expert working with some of the biggest brands you know of. Others are CFOs that have done startups to $80 million companies.
So these are women who have a lot of
bravado.
Yes, a lot of exactly, and energy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely. But again, are maybe a little tired of being out in corporate America, a little burned out, or they have their own practice and they're kind of sick of feeling so alone. So it's that solidarity as well. So it covers the spectrum of women out there, or the individuals who, again, are burned out on corporate America and wanting to go out on their own, but taking that leap alone is just far too great of a daunting
Okay, now
experience.
this is interesting for me,
Yeah.
and a lot of our audience as well, because I get that a lot. Clients who come to me, they say they're very high-powered women. They've created an empire, but they want to do something else, something personal, something that speaks of them, which is interesting that you mentioned that.
Yes, it really is. And it, especially now with COVID having hit, what 19th and Co is it not only empowers women to practice their craft, but in a way that fits their life also, right? Because when you own your own business, when you are a consultant, you do get to kind of make your own schedules and
What about the name? Where did that come from? 19 and Co.
I'm glad you asked. It is from the 19th Amendment. It's a nod to the 19th Amendment to remind us all that that was one of the biggest strides we all made, but that was a bit ago, and we need to step up and take our next stride. And that leads me to the confidence mission.
Go girl.
Yeah. So it's what I'm coining the confidence revolution, just as it was women's suffrage. This is going to be our next mission and our next stride that we make as a community of women. Right now, that gender gap, as you mentioned, is so much this. It's a hole, it's a gap, as we all visualize when we say the term gap. But what it is it's a catching up in my mind. I don't want it to make anyone believe that women are less than, that we got left behind. There's no pity party. It's just we're catching up because culturally we were in the home caring for the children because the men were the home, the breadwinners, right? And now that story has changed, where there's 2-income families, it's just a chance to catch up. But what we need to catch up is confidence. And innately women.
Christine Woodward for president. I'm voting. She has my vote.
Thank you. It is something that we just naturally don't have. I could go into the research of it, but yes, there's the testosterone that we lack much less than men. There's just culturally, aren't given the space and the oxygen to voice our opinions, to then see ourselves in, that light and that empowerment, to then compound our confidence and keep that going. There's so much in our culture and our chemical makeup that has brought us to where we are in our level of confidence. And I'm here to spread this idea. If nothing else, if there's nothing else beyond this concept that is learned, that's all I ask, is that the idea of confidence is a skill and therefore can be acquired. That's it. Plain and simple. It is just like any sport. Even if you think you're not athletic, doesn't even take that. It just needs practice. That is it.
All right. Now, of course, that's not enough for me here because you've worked with cases. I'm going to ask you, just like operationalized in research, case studies, because not all stories are success stories. Not all women are the same. So they start at 0, sometimes get to 50, sometimes they start at 50 and go to 200. So I'd like to have sort of examples so you can show us how you worked with a specific case. That could be an example of a certain class of cases. You see what I mean?
Sure. Yeah, no, great point. And I am glad to bring that up. So I think someone who maybe on the younger spectrum, which usually might be on that spectrum of 0 to, starting at 0.
When you say young,
yes, I would say it was mid-20s was when I started with her.
The Zen generation, the Z generation?
She is on the cusp of millennial.
Right, millennial.
Yeah. And really what it was, it penetrated and permeated her personal and her professional life. So didn't expect much for her personal life in terms of the man she was seeking, right? The kind of men that she, right. So many women think, oh, I attract the bad guys, or I attract the not so great guys. And that whole attracting is a product of you. It's a reflection of you and your expectations.
Just a second. Now, this young woman, she was in a specific field. Was she in a business field?
Well, yes, 25, had just come out of college, was in the retail space. So she was in corporate retail, and has recently made a transition from that. But yes, professionally, that's where she was. Personally, was not married yet. 25, starting to feel like, ooh, I'm getting a little behind the ball, 8 ball on this. And that's why I bring up the personal side first. Mm-hmm. In that, this idea of women magnetizing and attracting this bad crowd for a male counterpart or any partner is a reflection of you, and it's a reflection of your expectations. But your expectations
and the same stories that repeat themselves.
Yeah, right.
The same
and this goes for professional too, so you can actually translate the same story for professional. But expectations translates to your confidence and how much you value yourself. Right. That's what the expectations are that you expect for what you want in your life. And so as we started to really reframe that thought process around expectations on her personal life and in her professional life, that story started to change. And we actually, something that I do with some of my clients is go out and, if we go to coffee or if we go to cocktails, but we meet strangers intentionally so that they can practice this new narrative. It's a new story.
How interesting this is.
Vocalizing. It's the same idea and concept of going to a store and trying an outfit on you may never think you'd try on, but you go into the dressing room, you try it on. It's exactly like that. Thinking you could ever wear that daring outfit that you see in the window without ever trying it on, or let's even take it to the extreme, without even ever going into the store, it's comical, right? Like, of course you have to go into the store to even buy it, let alone even try it on to see if it would be a good fit. So not vocalizing something, not reframing it to then vocalize, to start telling that story and make it a reality is like not going into the store.
Okay. So they just put it aside without thinking they could ever even enter the store. Okay. So their mind blocked that
it's like, I can't even afford that dress, or for whatever excuses, they don't even step foot into the store. Right. And so that's an analogy for not even taking the time to think through your thoughts and try to reframe them and even start to believe that you could even have the audacity and the goal to walk into a store like that.
All right. So you took this woman for coffee, this young Miss 25. All right. Okay. And so she paid. So you were together, and how did that work out? I mean, I'm trying to get an idea.
Yeah, you could kind of see me as like a wingman, I guess, the movie Hitch or something.
I like that. I like that, the wingman.
Yeah, I act as a wingman, but we're not actually picking up men. We're not.
She says that sure. Because her
there's a byproduct, certainly. I'm certain there can be a byproduct. And in fact, she did start dating this one gentleman. But interestingly enough, it was many notches above her previous men that she had dated, but still wasn't even good enough. But the idea that she even had I'll use the word audacity in her mind to think he's not even good enough. And he was an attorney, living in San Francisco, which she had gotten nowhere near that before in terms of caliber. Right. And he was very nice, was already leaps and bounds beyond where she had been. And that was because we'd gone out with a story that of what she wanted to be, right? And we started with a professional story that helped to paint a new picture of who she was. And so the story went that she lived in San Francisco, and at the time she actually lived in Central California, lived in San Francisco and was getting her MBA. And so she met this gentleman, like I said, miles above anyone else she'd ever dated, started dating him, didn't work out, and that's fine. But guess what happened ultimately a couple years later? She got her MBA and she married an incredibly amazing man who wanted children. I mean, he's like that 50, the mom dad, and he's a pharmacist. So like highly educated, great guy.
So she got the cake, the dog, the garage, everything.
Yes, actually. Yeah.
Somebody who pays for her coffee.
Yeah. And she even had the audacity to go out and start her own business as well.
Good. So let's say that started as a story that was difficult to get off the ground, but it went, after a couple of years, was successful. Let's have another. I love these little stories. I mean, this is fun. What about a case study of another person, maybe a different age with a different type of issue, maybe that it didn't necessarily mirror or correspond to something in her emotional life? Think of it.
Yes. Well, I'll say this was a business owner. So this really pertains to the professional realm of her life. And what happened is she wanted to bring me into her business, really start to alleviate the things that were on her plate so that she could just have her life back, maybe do more BD, but actually transition the business into an exit. So selling it off.
Okay. You said more BD?
Oh, sorry. Business development.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
All right.
Just giving her more time to build the business in a way that she could then exit and sell it. So there was we were building a strategy around that. And what happened was really this lack of confidence in relinquishing control of her business. And that was something no one anticipated.
How interesting is that?
Yeah.
Fear.
Yeah. Right. And while I truly believe she thought it was rooted in that she just absolutely loved design. She wanted to stay in the day-to-day. I really believe in the heart of hearts of both of us, we were well aware that it was fear of the unknown. She was much further along in her career. She was in her, late 50s, and had this business for close to 25 years. So, had played the same role that entire time, obviously relinquished some role of her role because she'd grown the team, but to the degree that she would remove herself completely.
Well, how did she do it? What happened?
She didn't.
Oh,
so I'm giving you a non-success story.
Non-success.
Yeah.
So how long did you work with her? How the period that you worked?
Yeah. And let me reframe that. Non-success, it was more a reframing of her goals, right? So based on the level of confidence she had. And I think, it's actually kind of a sad story for me because I know that we can all reach the goal we ultimately want. But I do have to say the goal we ultimately want may not fit the time in our life, whether depending on our age, right?
Well said.
The other factors in our life. So as much as we do hope for that shooting for the moon, we may have to land on the stars, shooting for the stars, landing on the moon. It may be a product of our circumstances, but when I say that in that same breath, I do want to, on the flip side of that, say, please don't use circumstances as excuses because there's this, I was raised with this motto, and it was a he, sorry for the pronoun, so I'll change it. She who really wants something finds a way. She who doesn't finds an excuse. And I live by that.
Exactly.
It really is the truth. But I do give people grace in that there are definitely many circumstances that push you to a brink that it's just not a possibility at that point in time. So I haven't reconciled with that. I'd like to say that that's not okay in my book.
So let's say, how do you feel at the end, the business, I'm going to say the client relationship and you, when you come away from that, is there something, not a closure because there's no closure there, but maybe in the future sometime, does that happen? Or it didn't work this time, I wasn't ready, but the outcome.
Sure. So even when we say we have a quote unquote success, as in the case of that first one I mentioned, the 25-year-old, life doesn't stop there. Just because she got married, got her MBA. I mean, we have these, what's the next hurdle, right? And so it is something where that's an ebb and flow. I weave in and out of people's lives. In the case of the non-successful, quote unquote story or case, that one is something that I haven't heard back from her. And I think it's sad to me because
it reminds me of the parable, the sheep that that's life, but that's the thing that keeps you awake at night.
And and I have a job to push people. That's what I see myself as. I'm a coach, like you see on a football field. I don't really refer to myself as we know, the coaching, leadership coach or that sort of thing. I like to think of myself as a coach on a football team, and I push my team players. I push them to the brink at which they think they can't work any harder, right? You imagine yourself when you're training. And then when you realize that you did what you thought you couldn't, you come out and you look at your coach and you're like, thank you. I didn't know I had that in me.
Interesting.
And that's my job.
Who knows what you were in a past life?
What do you think?
I don't know. Military? I don't know.
Yes. Oh, I think my family would actually agree with you.
Agree with you.
Yes. On the flip side of that, I do need to learn how to turn that off. So my poor family, my poor kids.
No, but there's another side of a flip side to the way you go about working that has a lot of you in it, your nature, and maybe there's a little bit of fear of failure there as well. I'm not sure, because from the outside, the people you work with, there's such a close relationship, and they become your mirror, and you reflect to them and they reflect to you. And then when something's not reflecting, the spell is broken. I don't know. I can understand. It must be devastating, really. I wouldn't classify it as a failure, but a missing link. There's something there to learn about.
I didn't tap into them properly. Yeah, I couldn't.
Maybe.
I couldn't say it in another way that struck a chord with them. And so it does feel like a fail on my part, like a coach, not saying it in the way that resonated with them. That's the best way I can put it.
You had her do just one too many push-ups. That's what it was.
Right? Or not enough.
She said, you're right. I'm out of here.
Funny enough, in that case, I feel it wasn't enough, maybe.
Right, probably.
Yeah, and to kind of bring it back to what you were mentioning about, do I have a sense of fear of failure? It's an interesting concept, because if you ask anyone in my life, they'd be like, oh goodness, absolutely not. She tries everything and anything and moves through things very quickly. But I think, like with anything, it's quite nuanced. Deep down in there, I move through and try everything quickly because I fear so much of regret. Right. Well, so I do fear something, certainly, but it's not the thing I'm about to go do. It's that if I don't do this.
I'm not sure if it's regret, but there's something, it looks like you yourself do a lot of push-ups too. You are hard,
I'm very hard on myself.
I can see that you probably really, like a military officer. But let's get, this is not a psychological setting here. We don't. I love the stories, because then you're going to have to pay me. Now, there's this whole notion of gender gap, because it's maybe a cliche, but it's so instilled there everywhere.
Agreed.
And but well, you explain how you came across that at the university level, and what was it exactly that was the last straw?
Yeah, right. Thank you for that reminder. Yeah, while a tutor, or RA rather, a resident
assistant, or
assistant, as most colleges call it, at Harvard, we had under us probably close to 10 sophomores, because they when they come into the dorms, you have your freshman dorms and then you have your upperclassmen dorms, and that's where we were. When you come in, you're a sophomore, and we have about 10 of those students under our umbrella. And each year they rotate, obviously, with new sophomores. And I can't tell you how 90% of them, unprovoked and in one-on-one meetings, so they're not hearing other students saying this, the saying they would say to me, the comment they would make was, I feel like I slipped through the admissions crack. And I'd never heard anything like this. And as you mentioned earlier,
what does that mean? That they got by and they didn't expect to get by?
Yeah, they got lucky.
They got lucky, but they were men or women, or just all of them?
This was just women.
Just women.
Thank you. Yeah, this was just women that said this.
This is sad.
And whether, this isn't the cleanest experiment and study I could do, is this that men kind of keep that close to the vest, right? And they just don't say it, but they felt it. And women just feel more comfortable saying it, or did men just really not say it? So again, not the cleanest experiment, but certainly one in passing that is worth bringing up. And it's
as if they were part of a quota that had to come through, and that idea, is so. You don't know if you've earned it, already.
Right, which I would imagine many minority women feel that way, or minorities in general. All right, I was just part of a quota. And these were white women too, many of them. Actually, the majority of them were white women that would say this. So certainly they didn't have the trifecta of a low income Black woman,
Right.
but they were still a woman. So they had a
But
single aspect of that. Yeah.
but what was it that made you hook onto confidence? What made you think that it was the confidence?
Yeah, it's been something that's been brewing since, well, probably since my childhood, but certainly big moments like that one, COVID hitting, when there was this opportunity for us all to reevaluate what we were doing, and my mother-in-law passing. So those big three moments in my life, two of which were quite recent, and they were the ones that pushed this over the fence, was the tipping point for me to say, I am going to go out and do whatever it takes to start teaching the word of confidence, and that concept that it's simply a skill that just needs to be learned. Mm-hmm. And to women in particular, from elementary school students to senior care living. So
you put your thoughts together, everything you got, and you put it into 19 and Co. And then, but there's something else here. There's a project called the JuDi Project. JuDi. What does that stand for?
Mm-hmm. Thanks. Yeah, that's the first two letters of my mother-in-law who passed away and my mother. So JuDi was, wildly enough, she was Judy, my mother-in-law, but Diana. So that's where the DI comes from. And because together, the two of them create the formula for confidence. My mother-in-law, who is a private practicing PhD psychologist, so an expert in our thoughts and the reframing of them. And then my mother, who's an expert in our bodies, in our actions. She's a registered nurse, a personal trainer, and she is the one where I got my militant practices from, certainly. But you need both of those to come together. And our formula is thoughts plus action equals confidence. And some of the formulas floating out there are really actually thoughts plus confidence equals action, so that it gives you the ability to take action. But I think that's absolutely a fallacy.
What is the project about?
So the project about, it really is, it is the teaching of confidence to women. And I hate to say women and discriminate. I will say those that have a lack of confidence. Women happen to be a prime candidate for that audience. But the JuDi Project is the confidence revolution that teaches the skill of confidence.
Your company is 19 and Co. And then the project is something else. I saw them as two different things. Is the project, I don't know, funded by something? Is it experimental? How do they exist?
Yeah, the consultancy is kind of, again, as you mentioned, where did the JuDi Project come from? It's, again, one of those moments after moments after moments with each of those clients that made me realize how that lack of confidence in even the most powerful women who are owning their own businesses experience. That then I created the passion project, what is called the JuDi Project, that the curriculum is, and the movement is the confidence revolution. And it is something that's experimental right now. I'm actually building out my advisory board.
Okay. Now you mentioned, you mentioned the curriculum. So I imagine there's some kind of seminar work coming up.
Workshop. Yeah.
And so then there's a board there too, advisory board. And where are you looking, and where are you?
Yeah, it's actually, I know it's, I'm glad you asked.
The 25-year-old is going to be there. Is she?
No,
come on.
She'll be a testimony. The advisory board is actually very broad, which is really exciting. So I have a New York Times bestselling author who's a child development expert, because this starts when we are young. So then it moves forward, and I've got a professor at Johns Hopkins where I'm getting my MBA, and she teaches the Power and Politics class, and as an expert in resiliency. That's what a lot of her research is around. And then to round it out, I have an Olympian, Holly McPeck, who's because she actually owns her own beach volleyball club.
And plus she's resilient.
Yeah, right. And coaches women, women. And so much of that is confidence. And she's actually the one who said it was an epidemic. And while I felt it, that was something.
What was an epidemic?
The lack of confidence in women is an epidemic. And so it's those three women, and we're currently actually building out with some more potential Olympians. Well,
you see, the thing that because I work with language, I'm a linguist. And so when you talk about confidence, and then because that's not a watchword that builds on the empowerment notion that has been the watchword for the past 7-10 years, let's say. And confidence is something different, you know. And so I'm listening to you, and the confidence has always, I mean, my idea is, okay, we do have the power in all of those people that you work with, the bravado of these women, they are empowered, but they, you know, that taking that step is probably part of the confidence epidemic, you know, that you mentioned.
Absolutely. It is. And I think what's really important is hearing these stories of women like this that I mentioned are on the advisory board, or the next woman that you see who's, excuse my French, a badass, right? Like the CEO or whatever the case may be, or some famous person. The story goes only what you see, right? It's like a Facebook post or an Instagram profile page. That's all you're seeing. And you think, oh, they've just always had that confidence. It's amazing. I wish I could be them. And the real story is, and they will tell you, they were the shyest kid in school,
Yes,
right?
Of course.
And it's those stories we need to pull back the drapes and rip open the, you know, peel back the Instagram posts and the Facebook posts and show the real story that happened that got those women to that point, that allowed them to build on that confidence like a layer cake to get to those heights that you're currently seeing them at.
Yeah. No, it's actually easier to do those push-ups than to do the rest. I mean, it is for everyone who has a smile, it's behind the smile is a lot of work. There's a lot of suffering. And so I'm not sure that everyone, let's say your average person, understands that. Well, take me, people see that I'm smiling all the time. They think I'm rich, famous, you know, that kind of thing. And it's you just don't go around telling people your story, you know what I mean? And it's difficult because it's today, always what you see is what they get. That's it. Your calling cards. You have a couple of calling cards. One is when you open your mouth. That's where I come in. What comes out, that's a very important calling card. How you look is a very important calling card, because that's the first thing people see. And then the last is the action you take. And that's where this confidence is, that construct is right there.
Yes. And so many times women think that they need the confidence to be able to take that action, right? What I'm arguing and what I've built in the curriculum is techniques to be able to take the action before you even have that confidence, because waiting for that emotion to bring itself about in your world, for you to then take the action, you'll be waiting quite some time. And guess what? The more you wait, what I coined the hesitation habit, the more there be that physiological response in your mind that says, oh, I should wait for, I should wait for real good reasons, right? So in primitive days, when we hesitated, there was real reason, because we might not live if we acted in that moment, right? If we stepped out of our cave, if something made us hesitate, it was for good reason.
For survival.
Now, for survival, thank you. Now we don't really have those consequences for the most part. So hesitation really is this construct of it's an excuse. Thank you. It actually is. If you allow that hesitation to take its course, that 5 seconds to have the physiological response to tell yourself that, to really create the justification, the rationale for the excuse. That's all it's waiting. Look, you're just waiting.
You've brought me right to the surprise last topic that
Bring it on.
I wanted to leave it to the end.
Please.
Life as an adventure, right? The adventure, and not as a dress rehearsal. I like the idea of having a dress rehearsal, always being prepared, but the adventure, go on.
Yeah. Helen Keller said it so well. She said, if life is an adventure, something around this, so life needs to be an adventure or it's nothing. And to say it so frank and crass and crude, I think is refreshing, because it needs to be as black and white as that. Because if you live in the gray every day, you're going to end up where months, years later, you're going to find yourself in the same boat you wish you weren't, because you just, and that gray I'm talking about being your comfort zone. So,
Right.
and the adventure being the antithesis of that. The adventure is that discomfort. And what I teach and practice in my own life is that discomfort. I can't tell you how many times in a day I experience discomfort and feel like a fool.
Give me an example. Come on.
Yeah. And I want to say one more thing, that comment that you say to yourself, who am I? Why me? That comment runs through my mind. So while I may be taking those leaps of discomfort, I'm still saying some negative things to myself and still practicing trying to overcome that. But yes, to give you some examples, like reaching out to an Olympian to be my board of advisors on the board. How about that as an example? Who then agreed and then said, let me hook you up with X, Y, and Z. And I can't wait to say the names out loud. I need to wait till they've agreed. But you would be floored. And she even asked, you know, X, you know, Y. And I'm thinking, that's like asking, do I know Michael Jordan? Yes, I know them. So it's having that audacity. And I love using the word audacity and being audacious, because while it sounds crude and almost has a negative,
it fills your mouth. I mean,
it does. It fills your mouth like a bad word, right?
Like a bad word. Yeah.
It makes you feel that intensity like a curse word.
Yeah.
And I think that's important. So it's very much like striking a power pose, saying words that are, what's the word? It's what Trump does. It starts with an S. I think it's not superfluous, but anyway.
Power-packed words? No.
Power-packed words, right. So, and if using that kind of language, being a linguist yourself, and by the way, linguistics was one of my favorite undergraduate courses. I almost went that track. It's just so important. So yes, on a daily basis, I'm reaching out to, as an analogy, to Olympians and feeling who am I?
Good. There's an expression in Italian, chi si crede di essere, the same thing. Who am I? Same
that's
thing.
beautiful. Yeah.
There was, you made me think of a story. I started my professional interpreting career in New York City. And I was, I don't know, I was like the 25-year-old, and a couple of years after that, 27, I think. And one day I started, putting out my seeds. And after 3 months, I got a check in the mail. And this was many, many years ago. And it was $750. It was a retainer fee for a week's conference, international conference, in front of the UN. I looked at the check. I went home and I said, I just got a check. What am I going to? I had never done a conference in my life. I had been trained, of course. And she says, my mother says, who better than you can do that? I said, you're right. I went to the bank and did the week. And it was great. It was a great feeling, but I was shocked.
Bless your mom
but they put the money in my hand,
Yeah. Bless her for her reaction. And this is exactly what the confidence revolution needs to do. I'm going to tap onto that. And then that example is that this isn't about women leveling up in confidence for themselves. This is about taking that confidence and having the responsibility to have a ripple effect in your community of women, both on your immediate family, your daughters, your nieces, and your nephews, the men in the world too. But this is about being the mom that says, like what your mom said, who better than you to do that? Absolutely. Yeah. They are lucky to have you. And while if there's moms listening, it might feel strange to say those things because it just seems a bit stretched, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Right. I don't know the best word. This is exactly what my mother-in-law gave me, but I didn't have it in my childhood. I only got it when I was 20, started at 20. And it was the game changer. The reaction you have to your daughters saying, you are so smart. You are so creative. These are the comments you need to be saying. Even if she is not, you think she's not listening, she's listening. Yeah. If she's 25, I don't care. Say this to your daughter. Any woman in your life, remind them of how smart, creative, resourceful, powerful, and they are the exact person that should be doing exactly what they're doing.
And I always say that you're a woman. You bleed generally from 3 to 7 days and you don't die. You've got to remember that. How powerful we are. That's power.
Yeah, that's a really beautiful sentiment. Yeah. When my kids ask me, mommy, I was in your tummy. Wait, what? How does that work? I grew. And I say, isn't it amazing? It's magical. And then my son says, I can't do that, huh? And I say, no, I feel bad for him because he doesn't get that magic, that power.
Not this lifetime. Who knows?
Not this lifetime. Yeah. That's an incredible story that you bring up about, those initial stages when we start to realize our power. And it's only in those are the moments where they can either move us forward, or they can,
Right. Yeah.
or they can be the one-off luck.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
your choice which one it is.
Yeah. Yeah. Today, let's jump out of this discussion, and you're in this, all right? You've created all of these things in boxes, and you're having people do push-ups and all of that. Now, let's say that in Italian, we call a dream in the closet. You have a dream in the closet. Is there something in that closet that you're not doing today, but there's something that, who knows when I'm going to open that closet, pull it out, and maybe, do it. Is there something in there?
I'd still say it's this confidence revolution. The point at which it's at is nowhere near where I want it to be. And it's still somewhat in the closet. Not enough people know about it. And I'm not even sure, when it's in the closet, it's dark. You don't know what shape and form it is. You don't even know exactly what it is, but it's in there. I'm still at that point, and I can't wait to be able to pull it out and see it in all its glory and all its shape, and let it grow from there and give it the oxygen it needs. But it's almost like I'm trying to scavenge the food for it right now to give it the fuel it needs to even get out of the closet.
Well, what's interesting to hear you and the story is that you're already dreaming, way ahead of you in light years to get these people in that are influential. They are influential any way you put it, and they're positioned in a way that will help you, even your mind, to open to something, phenomenal, and that's really important. That's really, really important.
Can I also say an example that I wanted to mention earlier about you saying the check you got, but you'd never done a conference? Perfect example of raising your hand before you think you're ready. And this is something women don't do. Men do it on the regular.
What do you mean? Wait, give me an example.
Yeah, that's the
raising
example.
your hand in class, raising your hand.
That's a metaphor. The idea that you got that check and you didn't say, "Oh no, I've not done a conference."
I see what you're saying. I see.
You knew you hadn't done a conference yet. You stepped up and said, "I'm going to figure this out."
Yeah.
Right. And you did. You accepted the check
because my mom thought I could.
Exactly.
I was really shaking in my boots.
Of course. And I don't,
an easy job.
No, I don't discount the fear that you will feel when you step into that zone of raising your hand and actually taking on that endeavor that you raised your hand for, that you didn't feel ready for. But like, for the example, when I first started all of this, I raised my hand metaphorically to sign up for a webinar for Dell's Women's Entrepreneur Network.
Nice.
And I hadn't created the webinar yet. I'd never created a webinar, but I raised my hand. They accepted me. Oh, clock started. Let's create a webinar. So nothing, and this is actually something my team members always laugh about. This is a saying I say, nothing like a deadline. You need to create those deadlines in your life. The only way you create those deadlines in your life is you raise your hand before you're ready. Yeah. That's the key. Yeah. But we have, that's a bit of a leap beyond the little horse before the cart. I have a lot of techniques to get you to raise your hand. But it's the mind shift that your mom did for you. And then a couple techniques to actually once you've convinced yourself you want to raise your hand, then the techniques to actually raise your hand, which is that action. So all a metaphor.
This reminds me of another job I was interpreting. I was well into and after half of the day, some gentlemen come up to me and they say, "We have to meet your husband."
The man that supports this woman.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know which. Right. It was so funny. And because I was just thinking the same thing about you, and it brought me in that position. How is anybody going to keep up with her?
Yes, he is quite the opposite of me. He's he is my rock and my angel. And he is the one, since his mother passed, he's the one who continues to carry that torch to remind me of, I am the perfect person for this. It's
so interesting the way you come to do the things that you do, and it's not by chance that you are surrounded with people who are rooting for you, in one way or another.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and that only comes with high expectations.
Yes.
And then what I want to say too, in that the audacity I just had to say I'm perfect for this. There's two things your listeners are going to hear: wow, she's bragging, or B, what makes her perfect?
Yeah.
And here's right. Because I'm thinking those things in my own mind, like, oh goodness, that was a bit much. here's what I want to tell anyone who thinks those things when they hear someone like myself. Support the next woman next to you.
Yeah.
Give that woman a high five for the humble brag she just had, and humble brag not being a negative thing, because we need to redefine how we treat ourselves as a community of women. And B, why aren't you saying those things about yourself? There's an art to, I'll call it bragging. And there's actually a book called Brag, the Art of Tooting Your Own Horn Without Blowing It. So cute.
Cute.
Peggy Klaus, she's out of Berkeley. And there is, men do it. There is an art to bragging, and you need to learn it, women, ladies,
to learn it.
Because it's not bragging. It's actually, it's exactly what brands
presenting. Here we are.
It's just conveying your expertise, and no one's going to do it but you. If you feel like you're bragging, you're either you have a discomfort with it, you're not comfortable with it, or B, you don't have the skill to know how to do it artfully. Either way, it's just practice, and you can master it. So I want to make sure that's said out there, because I don't want anyone thinking, oh, wow, she is an expert in it. No, I just said that I was. I actually do a lot of research in this space. So I am an expert. I've become that, but so can the next person on any one topic. So I just want to put that to rest as well.
Gee, I don't know what else to say, Christine. You have, I know when we finish this interview, I'm going to do some push-ups.
I actually have a personal trainer now. I can't do it on my own.
Good.
Just so you know, I mean, it's the same thing with any expertise. You really can't train yourself.
Yeah, good for you.
A personal trainer needs a personal trainer. A therapist needs their own therapist.
Listen, of course, I want to let you know that people who will be listening or watching would like to then know all of your information. So we'll put that under the video, under the podcast description there, where they can find you, your website, the program and projects, and some social media that you have. This way, you never know. People could that need a boost of confidence will just come right to you.
Please connect with me. I'd love to hear your story and work through it.
Thank you so much for coming. It was a breath of fresh air, really.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye, Christine. Bye-bye.